The perfect setup for Remco. Every once in a while, a World Championship course appears that looks like it's been tailored in secret meetings inside a rider's garage. Kigali, Rwanda 2025 was exactly one of those. A route practically tailor-made for Remco Evenepoel. This wasn't just another urban loop. This was a relentless rollercoaster of short climbs, punishing gradients, technical cobbled ramps, and a finishing circuit that stacked fatigue on top of fatigue until only the strongest would have been standing. For Remco, a rider who thrives on attrition, time trial pacing, and explosive accelerations, this was a cycling equivalent of home field advantage. Even commentators in the weeks before the race could barely contain their excitement. They whispered about how this was Remco's course, and how he would explode the peloton on Mount Kigali, how his repeatable power output and his ability to sustain high efforts made him almost unbeatable here. On paper, Pogačar didn't have the same level of efficiency for multiple anaerobic surges. The Belgian fans arrived in Rwanda dreaming of back-to-back rainbow jerseys. The opening phases of the race confirmed the predictions. Evenepoel looked sharp, floating near the front, watching rivals but never panicking. His cadence was smooth, his attacks were measured, and his composure was intact. Kigali wasn't just a battlefield, it was his playground, until it wasn't. On Mount Kigali, the centerpiece climb, disaster struck. Remco rode squarely into a pothole that many riders had managed to dodge. Normally, that's a jolt to the wrists or a bruise to the rear, but this time, the impact broke his saddle clamp. The noise and the nose of the saddle dropped by about 2 centimeters. Now, 2 centimeters doesn't sound like much to a casual viewer, but in elite cycling, it's catastrophic. Imagine training all year with one setup, then suddenly being forced to pedal in a completely alien position mid-race. His hips closed, his hamstrings overloaded, and his glutes disengaged. He described it later as, quote, feeling power vanish instantly. The World Championships are unforgiving. You can't ride for 20 minutes with a saddle like that and expect to compete. He had no choice but to stop. The first stop. The first stop was handled pretty quickly. He swapped bikes smoothly, remounted, and still had a chance. Yes, he had lost around 20 seconds, but in championship races, 20 seconds is survivable. What mattered was that his legs still felt good, his confidence was intact, and his rivals had not fully capitalized. The rainbow was still within reach, but destiny doesn't simply hand you victories. Sometimes it rips saddles out from under you. The bike change fiasco. After the first swap, things would or should have been stabilized, right? He was back in the race, the new bike was rolling, and he began to settle into his rhythm again. But the mind is a tricky thing under pressure. Minutes later, discomfort flared. He started feeling back pain. The saddle position felt slightly off, or the geometry wasn't quite right. Or maybe his body. It was rattled by the sudden saddle collapse. It was searching for problems that weren't there. Whatever it actually was, it dawned on him. At 180 beats per minute, you don't analyze calmly. You react instinctively. And Remco reacted by pulling over again. This was the infamous second stop, a tactical calamity. Unlike the quick and clean first change, this one dragged into a nightmare. He gestured furiously at his team car, shouting in frustration, waving his arms like a commuter watching his bus sail past. The minutes ticked by, fans screamed, cameras zoomed in, and Pogačar, ahead on the road, didn't hesitate for a second. He pressed harder, widening the gap. In total, the second stop cost 42 seconds. That's not just a hiccup, that's an execution. In a World Championship, losing nearly a minute standing still is like handing your rival a free head start on the final climb. By the time Remco got moving again, the psychological damage had compounded the physical one. The cruelest irony? His mechanic, Dario Kloek, also his cousin, later insisted nothing was wrong with the spare bike. Quote, "We checked it 3 times. Geometry, saddle height, everything was identical," he said. If true, then the stop wasn't just costly, it was unnecessary. The Belgian's greatest rival wasn't Pogačar, it was panic, it was doubt, it was perception under pressure. And yet, even after this fiasco, Evenepoel kept riding like a champion. His cadence lifted, his chase began, and his willpower remained. Silver was salvaged, but gold had totally slipped away. The lost time versus the margin. Cycling, in the end, is a sport of seconds. Let's break down the Kigali disaster in cold numbers. 20 seconds were lost pedaling on the collapsed saddle before the first stop. 42 seconds were lost at the disastrous changeover. 10 additional seconds bleeding rhythm and reorganizing the chase. That's a conservative total of 72 seconds lost. And what was Pogačar's final winning margin? Well, roughly half of that. The math tells the story brutally. Without the mechanical failures and the panic stop, Remco was the stronger man on the day. The rainbow would have returned to Belgium. Instead, highlight reels now show Pogačar attacking, soloing away, arms outstretched at the finish line, fans watching casually. But those who counted seconds, those who saw the roadside drama, know better. It wasn't dominance, it was actually circumstance. The frustrating thing is how myths are created. History books flatten context. They don't say, quote, Pogačar won because his rival lost over a minute to saddle chaos. They say, quote, Pogačar, the strongest, was crowned in Kigali. Narratives simplify, but reality is messy. And in this mess, Pogačar wasn't untouchable. In my opinion, he was lucky. Admissions, narratives, and the alternate ending. After the dust settled, Remco showed honesty in his post-race comments. Quote, "I felt like I was super strong. The mistake was the second stop," he admitted. That's not excuse-making, that's acknowledgement. He knew the legs were there, he knew the form was there. What undid him wasn't at Pogačar's attack, but a mixture of mechanical sabotage and split-second misjudgment. Meanwhile, the Belgian camp descended into confusion. Mechanics swore the second bike was perfect. Analysts like Jose de Coa said bluntly, quote, "The second stop should never have happened." Former pro Jean Bankladze accused Remco of overreacting. Quote, "He threw in the towel too quickly." Dutch commentator Thijs Zonneveld went further, saying that he was, quote, "blaming equipment and shifting responsibility." The critics circled, but the numbers didn't lie. Remco was still good enough, even after losing over a minute, to finish silver. That's how strong he was. Compare this to Pogačar's words. He said that he, quote, "felt great all day," that he, quote, "had the legs," and simply rode away. Of course he felt great. His greatest rival was busy swapping bikes like an amateur on a Sunday ride. Was it strength? No. Was it untouchable dominance? No. It was opportunism. The counterfactual is not hard to imagine. Picture it. Remco's saddle holds firm. He smashes Mount Kigali with his trademark over-geared surge. Pogačar clings to the wheel, grimacing, the Slovenian's smile wiped away. On the descent, Remco leans through corners like a time trialist, building seconds. On the flat, his monstrous engine grinds out a rhythm only he can sustain. By the finale, he's solo, arms wide, Belgian roaring, the rainbow his once more. That was the script, until chaos rewrote it. Comment down below your opinions on what you think about this. Obviously we're going to have some butthurt Pogačar fans in the comments, but that's totally fine. I genuinely think Remco would have possibly won. Leave a like on today's video for good luck, and be sure to also subscribe to my channel if this is your very first time here. By subscribing to my channel, you'll be kept up to date with all of the latest cycling news, all of the latest cycling drama, and of course, as we've had a lot of in-season experiments recently, we'll be covering all of the latest results also.